Hey, what's up YouTube? DIY Guy here, and this is part 2 of changing the spark plugs on my 2009 Toyota Rav4 Limited V6. And if you missed the first part, check out my part 1 video. Okay, so put this back in and tighten up the 10mm bolt. And the last thing you got to do for each one of these is just put this back on. Make sure when you get it on there, that you're putting it on, make sure it clips. So when you try to pull it, you should try to pull it back off, and it should be stuck on there. So you should you see that it didn't stick on there. Okay, so finish the first 3 on the front and put the clips on there. Actually, there's a couple clips that broke off, and I'm going to show you how to replace those later, but I went ahead and put those on. They'll stay on for now. Now, the ones in the back are here, here, and under here. We're probably gonna have to take this this bracket off. Looks like it's got a 12mm bolt holding that bracket on because that's covering up the coil pack. So you can see the coil packs have those red dots on them, so it's pretty easy to see. So we're gonna do the same thing there. We're gonna take the clips off them, take the 10mm bolt out, and replace each one of those. Sometimes you just gotta work this one back. Gotta work it up a little bit. I might need 2 hands to kind of work both sides of this. It's loose. It just needs to be lifted off, and I don't want to break it. Loosen it up with 2 hands. So we're going to pull this out. You can see there's just barely enough room to get these out in the back. Now I got to get the spark plug out. All right, so just to kind of tell you what I did to get the ones on the back, I actually put in a extension like that because there's not a lot of room. If you can see, you have to kind of get it in there like that. So that helps me because the long extension is too long. So this one has the universal joint in the middle, helps me get it out. So that's what I'm going to use on the back 3. So just got the first 2 in the back on. I just wanted to show you this part here. This is a 12mm. This little bracket here is covering the coil pack. So I have to take this off here. Once we remove this, then it's the same procedure on the flash coil pack. Okay, now when you're replacing the intake manifold, one of the things you're going to want to do, I think, is my car has almost 120,000 miles on it, so in order to change the spark plug. So here is the part number for my car to change these gaskets. Now these gaskets, you know, after 120,000 miles, they start getting kind of hard and they may not seal as well. So I'm going to actually replace, so I bought 3 of these sets. You're going to want to replace all 3 of these before you put this back on the car. You want to get a nice seal on it, and might as well, since you have it all apart, might as well replace the gasket. Okay, so I pulled out, you can just pull they got little tabs on them here, you can just pull these out. There's the old one. And then the new one here, just gonna go in the same way. You're just gonna push that in, make sure it's sealed in there nicely, and then just do all 3 of these the same way. Okay, now before I put that back on here, what I'm going to do is clean all the surfaces on here. I've got some carburetor throttle body cleaner, and I'm going to make sure this is nice and clean around here so that the gaskets will seal, and I don't want anything getting in there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all that up, and then we'll be ready to put the intake manifold back on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back on here. And what we need to make sure that we hook these hoses back up. Now, there was the one here on the back So we want to do that one first before we get everything back together. I'm going to get some pliers here and be able to slide that back up on there. Got that one connected. Now I'm going to make sure that I've got this seated on here properly with these two studs. Make sure that I've got my hoses out of the way so that this can seat in here properly. This hose is to come up here. Okay, so we got this hose underneath here. We've got this hose on top, so we want to loosen that up, slide that all the way back on there. And we put this one, this little hose here, put that back on the front. Put this hose on here. And the next thing we're going to want to do before we get all that, anything else connected, is we've got to work on those back bolts and get those back in. Okay, so I was just able to get this one back in here by hand. You can kind of have to see from the side that that's the 12 bolt. Now I left that bracket slightly loose so that I could adjust it to make sure it fits the hole. Now once it's on the hole, then I'm going to tighten that 12 millimeter bolt on the bracket. Let's see. I'm going to tighten the one on the bottom of the bracket to make sure that it doesn't move. And then I'm going to tighten the one on the back of the intake manifold here. Get that snug, and then I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll tighten them both up. Alright, so I was able to, again, you get this one back on here, and now I can get this 12 millimeter socket on here and tighten that one up. Okay, so now I've got both of those tightened, and I'm going to work on the front part. Alright, so remember we had to put these two 10 millimeter nuts on here, one there and one there. I'm going to tighten those up, and then we're going to work on those four there. Okay, now before I tighten these down, I'm going to get these all in, and then I'm going to have to tighten them down evenly, a little bit at a time, so that the gaskets get sealed evenly. So let's go ahead and put all these in, and then we'll start tightening them down. Kind of tighten those down in a crisscross pattern a little bit at a time, so you don't get one area tightened down too much. Then I'm going to tighten up the outsides here. So after this, we'll get the rest connected and put the top back on. Alright, put this back on. I'm going to put the electrical connector back on this side. Now the last part we got to put back on is the throttle body over here. So I'm going to spray that and clean it before I put it back on. Alright, so we're going to put these 4 bolts back in to hold the throttle body. Now we cleaned it a little bit before putting it back in. Put these all in kind of hand tight, and then we'll tighten them down with the socket wrench. Get them all in there good. They should go in fairly easily. Now the one thing I almost forgot to do here was take this one out. But remember we had this little bracket here that was coming up, so we want to put that back in place on there before we attach the bolt to the throttle body. So I've got that bracket in there and tighten all those down. And then we should be done with the throttle. Okay, so I got the throttle body reattached. The last part I need to do here is put this back in. So there's gonna be a little bit of struggle getting this. So make sure these are loose so that get this back on. Now remember, this hose is gonna go back on here, but we'll do that last. We need to get these, pull this back and get the bottom. Make sure the bottom part is the bottom here. There we go. So I got this side almost in. It is kind of tough to get this thing in, but you got to make sure that you've got the gasket there. I've got that part sealed in. And now you got to get this part on here. That actually went on by itself pretty well while I was fighting with the other side. All right, so now we just have to make sure these are on here on the proper place before we tighten them down. I'll do them hand tight first so they don't move around too much. And make sure this one's over, and then I'll tighten those down. Okay, now put this back on here after I tighten both of these down, got this back on there, and that's it. Really, the only thing left is I just set the cover. On the cover, if you can see here, these little pegs are kind of what holds the cover on. So they'll just tighten on those things. Now, one thing, I'm going to actually make a separate video about this, but one of the things you're probably going to run into, and you can tell why this one has a different color than this, because I think that one has been replaced before. But what tends to happen is these little these little tabs, these become brittle and they break. The tabs break off, so there's nothing to clip it onto. I noticed that there had been one replaced on the back. It was a different color. So out of the 6 of them, it's more than likely when you're trying to pry it off, you're going to have that happen and snap off a couple of those tabs. So I'm going to make a separate video on how to replace these connectors. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Just set the top on and you're done. And I hope this helps. Just, help me out and subscribe and comment if you have any questions on the videos. Thanks.